Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're going over the 11-game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. Before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit the subscribe button. Now, I'd say I'd be here all season long, but the season is just about over. But I do cover other sports as well if you want to check that out, including NASCAR and the NFL, which we have NASCAR going all the way until November. Then it starts right back up again in early February. Then we have the NFL until February. So if you guys are going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. And if you want to follow me on social media, my handle is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you want to support more content over on Patreon, always much appreciated, although you probably don't want to for MLB because the season is just about over. But I do have the other sports on Patreon as well. So if you're interested, links down below. But if not, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's slate. Now the pitching, it's kind of a odd pitching slate. I shouldn't say odd. It's kind of just a straightforward, I think, for the most part. I think you have two clear options in Framber Valdez and Blake Snell. Then you got two mid-range okay options in Drew Smiley and Seth Lugo. But the thing is, pretty much my favorite offense on the slate is the Diamondbacks, and they're like all free for the most part. So if you want to spend up for Valdez and Blake Snell together today, it's not hard at all, and you guys will see that when I mention the bats. Like most of the Diamondbacks players are like around 3K or less, so it's not gonna be too hard to fit in the pitchers you want for the most part. We'll start up top here with Framber Valdez. He's coming off an excellent outing versus the Texas Rangers, where he had 35 Draftkings points, which was his best start of the season, striking out 11 on 100 pitches. The guy was absolutely fantastic. He's really only had two bad starts this season. One was versus the Dodgers on opening day, well, his opening start, which everyone gets a free pass versus the Dodgers, and then versus the Angels on September 6th. But besides that, the guy's been pretty much in the 20s for the most part. And then, like I said, he had that excellent outing versus the Rangers last time out. And as a lefty versus Seattle, Seattle has been really struggling with lefties this season. They've been much better versus righties when it comes to the lefties. On your 28% K rate, a 128 team ISO, a 186 team batting average, a 259 WOBA, and a 63 WRC+. So this is a very good spot for Framber Valdez. He's been very consistent this season. He's a heavy favorite, 6.5 strikeouts in Vegas, and the Mariners only have a 3.69 implied team total. So I like him quite a bit here, and he gets a lot of ground balls too. He's only got a 19% fly ball rate this season, a 60% ground ball rate, 26% K rate, and overall very strong number. So I love Framber Valdez, and I think he is the best pitching option on this slate because Blake Snell, he's not someone that's typically going to go too deep into games, so I feel like Valdez is the safest option among them. But you can easily play both, and as of right now, I'm going to try to play both. I don't think it's going to be too difficult. I've not tried to build lineups yet, but the guys that I like are pretty cheap. But anyway, Snell's fine, even though it doesn't go too deep into games. I mean, his pitch count was at 103 2 starts ago, but then 73, 92, 75, 101. It's a little kind of up and down. He's probably just going to get us 5 innings, but even then, that's fine given the options we have at pitching today because there just really isn't that many great options besides these two guys up top. Like, just looking at his game log, 16, 21, 13, 17, 23, 11. I mean, it's fine. I think he's going to be okay here. He's in a pitcher-friendly park at New York, and only 3.51 runs against him, 56% chance for the win, and 7 strikeouts over in Vegas. Looking at his numbers this season, they're strong. Over 1.5 home runs per 9 innings, which isn't great, but still a 30% K rate, a 3.07 xFIP. So I think he's a fine option here. And given the pitching slate, if you can fit in both of these guys, I feel pretty comfortable with it because they should be able to at least get you 40 points combined. And I think the other guys in the slate have some question marks to them. So definitely like those two guys up top. And if you can, try to play them both. And then getting into some more mid-range SP2s if you want to stack a team like the Braves or the Dodgers on this slate. So we got Drew Smiley here at 7,600. And he really hasn't been too bad this season. And I like targeting the Rockies on the road because they're obviously a much worse team away from Coors Field. But looking at Smiley's 5 starts this season, he scored 5 and 6 in his first one. We only went 1 inning and 3.1 innings. And then in his next 3 starts, he scored 16, 21, and 15. Now, he hasn't gone any deeper than 4 innings in a game yet this year, so you can't expect him to pick up a win. Looking at his pitch count, it's been at 20, 64, 71, 59, and 78. The strikeouts have been good the past 3 games, so it's 7, 8, and 8. So he's been okay. It's just, I don't like that he's not really going too deep into games, and that's what I'm kind of saying. I really like to just the double spend up today and then go cheap on your bats because there's some really good bats at cheap price points. But he's okay. I mean, the Rockies only have a 3.56 implied team total here. 5 strikeouts over in Vegas. He's a pretty heavy favorite. Looking at his numbers in a limited sample size this season, he's got a 39% K rate and a 2.5 xFIP, which is very, very good. Allowing a lot of hard contact though, but only half a home run per 9 innings. It's it's better pitching in San Francisco than it is Coors Field. So I think Smiley will be okay. The Rockies versus lefties this season, the numbers are going to look not too bad, but you have to factor in a lot of that comes from Coors Field. So I think Drew Smiley's going to be okay. He's just going to have to avoid Trevor Story kind of roughing him up. But for the most part, I think he'll be all right. But I don't love it because he's not going to go too deep into a game. Then Seth Lugo at 7,400. So before the last start, he was actually pitching quite well the past 4 starts. Then he just got absolutely bombed. I believe he gave up 3 home runs in a row. Then after that, he gave up a triple to Gene Segura in his last start. Like, it was almost 4 home runs in a row. The guy was just getting killed. But sometimes pitchers don't have their stuff. But if you're looking past that last start, I mean, he's been fine for the most part. I mean, 11, 25, 16, and 16. But even then, he's not going to go too deep into this game. But the Rays have been striking out quite a bit versus righties. We saw Jacob deGrom pick up 14 strikeouts last night. Not saying Seth Lugo's on Jacob deGrom's level, because pretty much no pitcher's on Jacob deGrom's level for the most part, besides someone like Shane Bieber. But Lugo's okay here. The Rays only have a team total of 3.99. He is a underdog here, and not many strikeouts over in Vegas. But which actually I think the number is incorrect, so I just exited that out. I think I got to fix that because it doesn't seem correct. But anyway, Seth Lugo, he's fine here. He's got a 32% K rate on the season, a 6% walk rate, 32% hard contact rate. Now his ERA is all the way up to 4.34, but his xFIP's nearly 2 runs lower, allowing over 2 runs per 9 innings, which is kind of gross, but I think he's okay if you want to spend up at bats. But for the most part, guys, I feel really comfortable with the 2 guys up top, and you guys will see that there's quite a few good cheap bats on this slate. So we'll move on to the bats now. And look, the Diamondbacks are free. The Baltimore Orioles are kind of free, going up against Nick Pavetta. And yeah, so I don't really think it's going to be too difficult to spend up at pitching. The Dodgers, they're expensive. They're not even in the greatest spot versus Frankie Moto. But sorry, the video cut out really quick. But anyway, we'll start up top with catchers. We have Stephen Vogt here at 3,500. Love all the Diamondbacks versus Jordan Lyles. Jordan Lyles is just not a very good pitcher. He has struggled with righties. He has struggled with lefties this season. And I think we can pretty much feel free to load up these Diamondbacks. They have a team total of 5.12 on this slate. And they're also very, very cheap. They're one of the cheapest stacks on the slate. And they're they're in one of the best spots in the slate as well. And Arizona is definitely a nice place to hit the ball as well, with it being pretty hot there. So definitely like Stephen Vogt here. He's got some decent power versus righties. High fly ball rate. Now the numbers overall aren't going to be too pretty, but does strike out quite a bit. And the batting average is very low, but he's got some decent pop versus righties. And Jordan Lyles is not a very good pitcher. Then Chance Sisco here at 3,300. I do like the Baltimore Orioles today. They have a team total of nearly 5 today, going against Nick Pavetta. Now Nick Pavetta, I don't think he's on DK. Like I'm trying to look up his name on salaries and whatnot. He just does not pop up, so I'm not sure why he's not listed on DraftKings today. But he's going to be the starting pitcher, and he's just not a very good pitcher either. I mean, it's a limited sample size, very limited sample size, but a 700 over to lefties this season. But anyway, I think we can just feel free to load up these Orioles here. They're also on the road, so you get the guaranteed 9th inning at bats. Chance Sisco projected to be batting cleanup here, and he's always had some decent pop versus right-handed pitching. So I think he's a fine option there. And then Dalton Varsho, 3,100. He's been doing pretty well the back half of the season. And again, I like all the Diamondbacks here, and if you're looking at his numbers versus righties this season, very low batting average, but over a 250 ISO. So I think Varsho at 3,100 is totally fine. Then dropping out of first base, we have Cody Bellinger at 5,600. I wouldn't say I'm in love with the Dodgers because the Diamondbacks have a higher team total than the Dodgers do, and they're also like almost all their bats are about 2K less expensive than the Dodgers. But Frankie Montas, he's not a bad pitcher, but they're still the Dodgers, and they crush right-handed pitching. So I put them on here. Again, I'm not in love with them. You certainly don't have to put them in cash games because I think most people are going to go Diamondbacks for the most part. But if you want to stack the Dodgers, they're okay just because they're so good versus right-handed pitching, and Frankie Montas will struggle with lefties, if anything. Not a bad pitcher, but near 400 WOBA to lefties this year, and Bellinger does crush right-handed pitching, so he's okay. Freddie Freeman going against Jose Urena. I definitely like the Braves on the slate, but again, they are pretty pricey, so I don't think they're a must, especially if you spend up at pitching. But still, they have a 5.3 implied team total, which is currently the highest on the slate. I believe there's one team that doesn't have a total yet. I'm trying to remember correctly who it is. I don't think I remember off the top of my head, but still like the Braves quite a bit here. Freddie Freeman's great versus right-handed pitching. Looking at his numbers this season, a near 360 batting average, over a 700 slugging, 2 WRC plus, and only a 12% carry. And overall, the numbers are just elite here. So Freddie Freeman checks all the boxes, and Jose Urena, he's someone that's going to be worse versus left-handed pitching compared to righty. So I do like Freeman. Then Christian Walker, 3,300. Again, I expect the Diamondbacks to be pretty chalky here. They're just so cheap. Like Vogt's 3,500, Varsho's 31, Walker's 33, Rojas 34, Van Meter 28, and the list goes on when we get to them. But you guys are way too cheap, and they're in just such a good spot here versus Jordan Lyles. I pretty much have 3 Diamondbacks in a row here. But Walker, he's got power to both sides of the plate, over a 200 ISO to lefties and righties, and he's batting near 300 versus righties this season. So definitely don't mind Christian Walker. Josh Rojas leading off for the Diamondbacks, only 3,400 here, looking at his splits versus righties this season. Not a large sample size, but he's cheap, and look, the Diamondbacks are in play here because Jordan Lyles is just not very good. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's all I can really say. I mean, he's just not that great of a pitcher, and these guys are way too cheap. in a hitter-friendly park as well. Josh Meter hitting second. He's only 2,800, so I think he's a fine option. He always has some decent pop versus righties. This season, his numbers are pretty gross, but I still think Josh Meter is fine. And then if you have a spend up, or no, it's not second base, continue. I only have 2 second base options there, and they're both Diamondbacks. But we also have Van Meter eligible at third base, and Rojas is also eligible at shortstop as well. Then dropping down to third base, we have Max Muncy, 5,300. Again, I don't love the Dodgers just because their team total is lower than a team that has a average salary of around $3,000 for their bats. But they're still in a decent spot here. Montas will struggle a bit with lefties, and Muncy does have power versus either handedness, so I think he's fine for stacking Dodgers, but by no means are they a necessary stack tonight. Eduardo Escobar, 3,700. This is just getting more exposure to the Diamondbacks versus Jordan Lyles. I pretty much, for the most part, have their entire lineup listed here just because they're all cheap. Then Edwin Rios at 2,100. He is just free for some reason. He's not a bad bat by any means. So if you need a dirt cheap option, Edwin Rios is certainly there. And again, guys, this is what I'm saying. It's not that hard to spend up a pitching today because the Diamondbacks are free. Edwin Rios isn't a bad bat. He's only 2,100. He's only eligible at third base, but you could throw in someone like Van Meter at second, and then Rojas at shortstop, and you can go really cheap with your bats today, and your lineup's going to still look pretty good. But Rios splits versus righties this season are about a 400 on base percentage, 471 slugging, and a 265 ISO. Low in the walk department, a lot of ground balls, and only a 206 batting average, but still he's 2,100 on a pretty good offense. Pretty good offense, one of the best offenses in baseball. Then going down to shortstop, I only have one guy listed here, but also keep in mind that Josh Rojas is eligible at shortstop as well, but I just didn't like any of the other options. So Corey Seager, if you're spending up, you go Seager here. He's been crushing right-handed pitching this season, and if you want to save some money, you just go with Josh Rojas, and you throw in Josh Van Meter at second base. But Seager, if you're looking at his splits versus righties this season, he's one of my favorite guys to roster this year versus righties. 340 batting average, about 700 slugging, 440 WOBA, and a 350 ISO, so he's fine if you got the money for him. Mookie Betts only in Dodger stacks. Certainly not going to go out of my way to plug him in cash games. Frankie Montas is tougher versus righties compared to lefties, but Mookie Betts has been crushing righties this season, and he's still one of the best players in baseball. So I'll give him the advantage over Frankie Montas. But again, I'm not going to go out of my way to play 6,100 for Mookie Betts. But going down to Cole Calhoun, 4,500. He's going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate. I think I'm going to make him the thumbnail for this video. But he's been doing great versus righties this season. Over a 300 ISO, a 133 WRC, plus a 528 slugging. The batting average is a little low, but he's not really striking out that much either, only 18%. And look, I think there's a good chance we see Cole Calhoun go deep tonight. So definitely want him in cash games. JD Martinez, 4,300. Hasn't been quite as good versus lefties this season as he was last year. Last year versus lefties, these numbers were dark shades of green. I mean, the guy was crushing over a 400 ISO, over a 400 batting average versus lefties. Hasn't been quite the case this season, but he's still one of the best bats in the league versus lefties over the course of his career. So JD Martinez is going to be interesting there now. No disrespect to Keegan Aiken. He's actually not been too bad this season. He's been certainly getting the strikeouts too. 36% strikeout to lefties, only 15% to righties. So if you're going to use anybody versus him, I'd prefer the righties like JD Martinez and Xander Bogaerts and a couple of other guys. Michael Brantley, 3,800. Don't love the Astros here. LJ Newsome, though, I mean, he's not a pitcher I'm going to be really too scared of. And Michael Brantley's a nice, cheaper option versus a righty. I mean, I've always liked using him versus right-handed pitching in this season. He's been doing very good versus them, although he's on a little bit of a cold stretch right now. But about almost a 340 batting average to righties, a 171 WRC plus, over a 200 ISO, and overall, very solid numbers for Michael Brantley. David Peralta, 3,600. Not a guy that's going to hit for a lot of power. He's kind of like the light version of Cole Calhoun, but that comes with a discount as well of nearly $1,000. But if you just want to stack this entire Diamondbacks lineup, I say go for it. Now, I realize you can only play a limited amount, but if you want to max that out, I have no issues with that at all, because these guys are just way too cheap versus Jordan Lyles. Peralta's hitting nearly 300 versus righties this season, so I think he's totally fine. Then we got 3 nice cheap options here in DJ Stewart, Cedric Mullins, and Jorge Soler. DJ Stewart's actually had quite a bit of power this season versus lefties. Smaller sample size, but he's crushing them. But versus righties, which is a bigger sample size, he's doing fantastic. A 265 batting average, a 471 ISO, a 482 WOBA. Does strike out quite a bit, but a 20% walk rate. I think DJ Stewart's fine. Nick Pavetta is not a pitcher that's going to scare me at all. So I definitely like the Orioles on this slate, and they're also pretty cheap too, so you can certainly stack them up. Then Cedric Mullins, just going to be leading off for the Orioles here, and pretty much similar reasons to DJ Stewart. Not quite the power, but he's still fine. Then Jorge Soler, 2,500. He's just a little bit too cheap here, going up against Austin Gomber. Now, Soler's a guy that's actually going to have more power versus righties the past couple of seasons, but still, only 2,500 for Soler versus lefties this season, a 250 batting average, which isn't fantastic, only 125 ISO, but the guy still has a ton of power, and he's just simply too cheap here, so I don't mind Soler as a cheap option. And also, when I was recording this video, I paused really quick, and I saw that Homer Bailey is now starting for the Twins, so you can use lefties versus him for sure. And my favorite one would be Victor Reyes from the Detroit Tigers. But that's pretty much going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate it. If you want to check out my NFL content, feel free to do that as well. Follow me on social media, support my content over on Patreon, and I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope you guys have a fantastic Tuesday.